And often she wondered why you couldn't eat something poetical like violets or roses, and they would have a beautifully appointed drawing room with pictures and engravings and the photograph of Grandpapa Giltrap's lovely dog, Garrowen, that almost talked like it was human, and chintz covers for the chair, and that silver toast rack in Clary's summer jumble sales like they have in rich houses. He would be tall with broad shoulders. She had always admired tall men for a husband, with glistening white teeth under his carefully trimmed sweeping mustache, and they would go on the continent for their honeymoon, 3 wonderful weeks. And then when they settled down in a nice snug and cozy little homely house, every morning they would both have brekkie, simple but perfectly served, for their own 2 selves, and before he went out to business, he would give his dear little wifey a good hearty hug and gaze for a moment deep down into her eyes. Eddie Boardman asked Tommy Caffrey was he done, and he said yes. So then he buttoned up his little knickerbockers for him and told him to run off and play with Jackie, and to be good now and not to fight. But Tommy said he wanted the ball, and Eddie told him that no baby was playing with the ball, and if he took it, there'd be wigs on the green. But Tommy said it was his ball, and he wanted his ball, and he pranced on the ground, if you please. The temper of him. Oh, he was a man already, was little Tommy Caffrey, since he was out of pennies. Eddie told him no, and to be off with him. And she told Sissy Caffrey not to give in to him. You're not my sister, naughty Tommy said. It's my ball. But Sissy Caffrey told baby Boardman to look up higher at her finger, and she snatched the ball quickly and threw it along the sand, and Tommy after it in full career, having won the day. Anything for a quiet life, laughed Sis, and she tickled Tiny Tot's 2 cheeks to make him forget, and played Here's the Lord Mayor, here's his 2 horses, here's his gingerbread carriage, and here he walks in, chin chopper, chin chopper, chin chopper, chin. But Eddie got as cross as 2 sticks about getting his own way like that from everyone always petting him. I'd like to give him something, she said, so I would, where I won't say. On the Beotitum, laughed Sissy merrily. Gertie McDowell bent down her head and crimsoned at the idea of Sissy saying an unlady thing like that out loud. She'd be ashamed of her life to say, flushing a deep rosy red. And Eddie Boardman said she was sure the gentleman opposite heard what she said. But not a pin cared Sis. Let him, she said, with a pert toss of her head and a piquant tilt of her nose. Give it to him, too, on the same place as quick as I'd look at him. Madcap Sis with her gollywog curls, you had to laugh at her sometimes. For instance, when she asked you would you have some more Chinese tea and raspberry jam, and when she drew the jugs, too, and the men's faces on her nails, when red ink make you spilt your sides, and when she wanted to go where you know she said she wanted to run and pay a visit to the Miss White. This was just like Sissykums. Oh, and will you ever forget her the evening she dressed up in her father's suit and hat, and burned cork mustache, and walked down Tritonville Road smoking a cigarette? There was none to come up to her for fun, but she was sincerity itself, one of the bravest and truest hearts heaven ever made, not one of your two-faced things, too sweet to be wholesome. And then there came out upon the air the sound of voices and the pealing anthem of the organ. It was the men's temperance retreat conducted by the missioner, the Reverend John Hughes S.J. Rosary, sermon and benediction of the most blessed sacrament. They were there gathered together without distinction of social classes, and a most edifying spectacle it was to see. In that simple fane beside the waves after the storms of this weary world, kneeling before the feet of the Immaculate, reciting the litany of Our Lady of Loretto, beseeching her to intercede for them, the old familiar words, Holy Mary, Holy Virgin of Virgins. How sad to poor Gertie's ears. Had her father only avoided the clutches of the demon drink by taking the pledge, or those powders, the drink habit cured in Pearson's Weekly, she might now be rolling in her carriage, second to none. Over and over had she told herself that as she mused by the dying embers in a brown study without the lamp because she hated 2 lights, or oftentimes gazing out of the window, dreamily by the hour at the rain falling on the rusty bucket, thinking. But that vile decoction, which has ruined so many hearths and homes, had sisted shadows over her childhood days. Nay, she had even witnessed in the home circle deeds of violence caused by intemperance, and had seen her own father, a prey to the fumes of intoxication, forget himself completely, for if there was one thing of all things that Gertie knew, it was that the man who lifts his hand to a woman save in the way of kindness deserves to be branded as the lowest of the low. And still the voices sang in supplication to the Virgin most powerful, Virgin most merciful. And Gertie, wrapped in thought, scarce saw or heard her companions, or the twins at their boyish gambols, or the gentleman off Sandy Mount Green that Sissy Caffrey called the man, that was so like himself, passing along the strand, taking a short walk. You never saw him anyway, screwed but still, and for all that, she would not like him for a father because he was too old or something, or on account of his face. It was a palpable case of Dr. Fell, or his carbuncly nose with the pimples on it, and his sandy mustache, a bit white under his nose. Poor father. With all his faults, she loved him still when he sang, "Tell me, Mary, how to woo thee," or "My love and cottage near Rochelle." And they had stewed cockles and lettuce with Lazenby's salad dressing for supper, and when he sang, "The moon hath raised," with Mr. Dignam that died suddenly and was buried, God have mercy on him, from a stroke. Her mother's birthday, that was, and Charlie was home on his holidays, and Tom and Mr. Dignam, and Mrs. and Patsy and Freddie Dignam, and they were to have had a group taken. No one would have thought the end was so near. Now he was laid to rest, and her mother said to him to let that be a warning for him for the rest of his days, and he couldn't even go to the funeral on account of the gout, and she had to go into town to bring him the letters and samples from his office about Catesby's cork lino, artistic, standard designs, fit for a palace, gives tip-top wear, and always bright and cheery in the home. A sterling good daughter was Gertie, just like a second mother in the house, a ministering angel, too, with a little heart worth its weight in gold, and when her mother had those raging, splitting headaches, who was it rubbed the menthol cone on her forehead but Gertie, though she didn't like her mother's taking pinches of snuff, and that was the only thing that they ever had words about, taking snuff. Everyone thought the world of her for her gentle ways. It was Gertie who turned off the gas at the main every night, and it was Gertie who tacked up on the wall of that place where she never forgot every fortnight the chloride of lime, Mr. Tunney the grocer's Christmas almanac, the picture of halcyon days, where a young gentleman in the costume they used to wear then, with a three-cornered hat, was offering a bunch of flowers to his lady love with old-time chivalry through a lattice window. You could see there was a story behind it. The colors were done something lovely. She was in a soft clinging white, in a studied attitude, and the gentleman was in chocolate, and he looked a thorough aristocrat. She often looked at them dreamily when she went there for a certain purpose, and felt her own arms that were white and soft just like hers, with the sleeves back, and thought about those times because she had found out in Walker's pronouncing dictionary that belonged to Grandpa Giltrap about the halcyon days, what they meant. The twins were now playing in the most approved brotherly fashion, till at last Master Jackie, who was really as bold as brass, there was no getting behind, that deliberately kicked the ball as hard as he ever could, down towards the seaweedy rocks. Needless to say, poor Tommy was not slow to voice his dismay, but luckily, the gentleman in black who was sitting there by himself came gallantly to the rescue and intercepted the ball. Our two champions claimed their plaything with lusty cries, and to avoid trouble, Sissy Caffrey called to the gentleman to throw it to her, please. The gentleman aimed the ball once or twice, and then threw it up the strand towards Sissy Caffrey, but it rolled down the slope and stopped right under Gertie's skirt near the little pool by the rock. The twins clamored again for it, and Sissy told her to kick it away and let them fight for it, so Gertie drew back her foot, but she wished their stupid ball hadn't come rolling down to her, and she gave a kick, but she missed, and Eddie and Sissy laughed. "If you fail, try again," Eddie Boardman said. Gertie smiled assent and bit her lip. A delicate pink crept into her pretty cheek, but she was determined to let them see, so she just lifted her skirt a little, but just enough, and took good aim and gave the ball a jolly good kick, and it went ever so far, and the two twins after it down towards the shingle. Pure jealousy, of course. It was nothing else, to draw the attention on account of the gentleman opposite looking. She felt the warm flush and danger signal always with Gertie McDowell, surging and flaming into her cheeks. Till then they had only exchanged glances of the most casual, but now, under the brim of her new hat, she ventured to look at him, and the face that met her gaze there in the twilight, wan and strangely drawn, seemed to her the saddest she had ever seen. Through the open window of the church the fragrant incense was wafted, and with it the fragrant names of her who was conceived without stain of original sin. Spiritual vessel, pray for us. Honorable vessel, pray for us. Vessel of singular devotion, pray for us. Mystical rose. And careworn hearts were there, and toilers for their daily bread, and many who had erred and wandered, their eyes wet with contrition, but for all that bright with hope for the Reverend Father Hughes, had told them that the great Saint Bernard said in his famous prayer of Mary, the most pious Virgin's intercessory power, that it was not recorded in any age that those who implored her powerful protection were ever abandoned by her. The twins were now playing again right merrily, for the troubles of childhood are as but fleeting summer showers. Sissy Caffrey played with baby Boardman till he crowed with glee, clapping baby hands in the air. Peep, she cried behind the hood of the push car, and Eddie asked where Sissy gone, and then Sissy popped up her head and cried, "Ah!" And my word, didn't the little chap enjoy that? And then she told him to say Papa. Say Papa, baby. Say Papa, 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 Papa. And baby did his level best to say it, for he was very intelligent for 11 months, everyone said, and big for his age, and the picture of health, a perfect little bunch of love. And he would certainly turn out to be something great, they said. Ha 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 ha. Sissy wiped his little mouth with a dribbling bib and wanted him to sit up properly and say pa pa pa. But when she did unstrap the strap, she cried out, Holy St. Denis, that he was passing wet, and to double the half blanket the other way under him. Of course, his infant majesty was most obstreperous at such toilet formalities, and he let everyone know it. Ha ba ba ha ba 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 ha ba. And two great big lovely big tears coursing down his cheeks. It was all no use soothing him with no, 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 baby, no, and telling him about the Gigi and where was the puff puff, but Sis, always ready-witted, gave him, with his mouth, the teat of a sucking bottle, and the young heathen was quickly appeased. Gertie wished to goodness that they would take their squalling baby home out of that and not get on her nerves, no hour to be out, and the little brats of twins. She gazed out toward the distant sea. It was like the paintings that man used to do on the pavement with all the colored chalks, and such a pity, too, leaving them there to be all blotted out. The evening and the clouds coming out, and the Bailey light on Howth, and to hear music like that, and the perfume of those incense they burned in the church, like a kind of waft. And while she gazed, her heart went pit-a-pat. Yes, it was her he was looking at, and there was meaning in his look. His eyes burned into her as though they would search her through and through, read her very soul. Wonderful eyes they were, superbly expressive, but could you trust them? People were so queer. She could see at once by his dark eyes and his pale, intellectual face that he was a foreigner. The image of the photo she had of Martin Harvey, the matinee idol, only for the mustache which she preferred because she wasn't stage-struck like Winnie Rippingham, that wanted, they too, to always dress the same on account of a play. But she could not see whether he had an aquiline nose or a slightly retrousse from where he was sitting. He was in deep mourning, she could see that, and the story of a haunting sorrow was written on his face. She would have given worlds to know what it was. He was looking up so intently, so still, and he saw her kick the ball, and perhaps he could see the bright steel buckles of her shoes if she swung them like that, thoughtfully with the toes down. She was glad that something told her to put on the transparent stockings, thinking Reggie Wiley might be out there, but that was far away. Here was that of which she had so often dreamed. It was he who mattered, and there was joy on her face because she wanted him, because she felt instinctively that he was like no one else. The very heart of the girl-woman went out to him, her dream husband, because she knew on the instant it was him. If he had suffered, more sinned against than sinning, or even if he had been himself a sinner, a wicked man, she cared not. Even if he was a Protestant or a Methodist, she could convert him easily if he truly loved her. There were wounds that wanted healing with heart balm. She was a womanly woman, not like other flighty girls, unfeminine he had known, those cyclists showing off what they hadn't got, and she just yearned to know all, to forgive all, if she could make him fall in love with her, make him forget the memory of the past. Then mayhap he would embrace her gently, like a real man, crushing her soft body to him, and love her, his own Miss Girlie, for herself alone. Refuge of sinners, comfortress of the afflicted, ora pro nobis. Well has it been said that whosoever prays to her with faith and constancy can never be lost or cast away. And fitly is she too a haven of refuge for the afflicted because of the $7 which transpierced her own heart. Gertrude could picture the whole scene in the church, the stained glass windows lighted up, the candles, the flowers, and the blue banners of the Blessed Virgin's sodality, and Father Conroy was helping Canon O'Hanlon at the altar, carrying things in and out with his eyes cast down. He looked almost a saint, and his confession box was so quiet and clean and dark, and his hands were just like white wax, and if ever she became a Dominican nun in their white habit, perhaps he might come to the convent for the novena of St. Dominic. He told her that time, when she told him about that in confession, crimsoning up to the roots of her hair for fear he could see, not to be troubled because that was the only voice of nature, and we were all subject to nature's law. He said, in this life, and that was no sin because that came from the nature of woman instituted by God. He said, and that our Blessed Lady herself said to the Archangel Gabriel, be it done unto me according to thy word. He was so kind and holy, and often she thought and thought could she work a ruched tea cozy with embroidered floral design for him as a present, or a clock. But they had a clock, she noticed, on the mantelpiece, white and gold with a canary bird that came out of a little house to tell the time. The day she went there about the flowers for the 40 hours adoration, because it was hard to know what sort of a present to give, or perhaps an album of illuminated views of Dublin or someplace. The exasperating little brats of twins began to quarrel again, and Jackie threw the ball outward towards the sea, and they both ran after it. Little monkeys, common as ditch water. Someone ought to take them and give them a good hiding for themselves to keep them in their places, the both of them. And Sissy and Eddie shouted after them to come back because they were afraid the tide might come in on them and be drowned. Jackie, Tommy. Not they. What a great notion they had. So Sissy said it was the very last time she'd ever bring them out. She jumped up and called them, and she ran down the slope past him, tossing her hair behind her, which had a good enough color if there had been more of it, but with all the thingamary she was always rubbing into it, she couldn't get to grow long, because it wasn't natural. So she could just go and throw her hat at it. She ran with long gandery strides. It was a wonder she didn't rip up her skirt at the side that was too tight on her, because there was a lot of the tomboy about Sissy Caffrey, and she was a forward piece whenever she thought she had a good opportunity to show, and just because she was a good runner, she ran like that so he could see all the end of her petticoat and her skinny shanks up as far as possible. It would have served her just right if she had tripped up over something accidentally on purpose, with her high, crooked French heels on her to make her look tall, and got a fine tumble. Tableau! That would have been a very charming expose for a gentleman like that to witness. Queen of angels, queen of patriarchs, queen of prophets, of all saints, they prayed, queen of the most holy rosary. And then Father Conroy handed the thurible to Canon O'Hanlon, and he put in the incense and sensed the blessed sacrament. And Sissy Caffrey caught the two twins, and she was itching to give them a ringing good clip on the ear, but she didn't, because she thought he might be watching. But she never made a bigger mistake in all her life, because Gertie could see without looking that he never took his eyes off of her. And then Canon O'Hanlon handed the thurible back to Father Conroy, and knelt down looking up at the blessed sacrament, and the choir began to sing the Tantum Ergo, and she just swung her foot in and out of time as the music rose and fell to the Tantum Ergo Sacramentum. 3.11 she paid for those stockings and sparrows of George's Street on the Tuesday, no, the Monday before Easter, and there wasn't a brack on them. And that was what he was looking at, transparent, and not at her insignificant ones that had neither shape nor form, the cheek of her, because he had eyes in his head to see the difference for himself. Sissy came up along the strand with the two twins and their ball with their hat, anyhow, on her to one side after her run. And she did look a streel, tugging the two kids along the flimsy blouse she bought only a fortnight before like a rag on her back, and a bit of her petticoat hanging like a caricature. Gertie just took off her hat for a moment to settle her hair, and a prettier, a daintier head of nut-brown tresses was never seen on a girl's shoulders, a radiant little vision, in sooth, almost maddening in its sweetness. You would have to travel many a long mile before you found a head of hair like that. She could almost see the swift answering flash of admiration in his eyes that set her tingling in every nerve. She put on her hat so that she could see from underneath the brim, and swung her buckled shoe faster, for her breath caught, as she caught, the expression in his eyes. He was eyeing her as a snake eyes its prey. Her woman's instinct told her that she had raised the devil in him, and at the thought, a burning scarlet swept from throat to brow till the lovely color of her face became a glorious rose. Eddie Boardman was noticing it too, because she was squinting at Gertie. half smiling, with her specs like an old maid, pretending to nurse the baby. Irritable little gnat she was, and always would be. That was why no one could get on with her poking her nose into what was no concern of hers. And she said to Gertie, "A penny for your thoughts." "What?" replied Gertie with a smile reinforced by the whitest of teeth. "I was only wondering, was it late?" Because she wished to goodness they'd take the snotty-nosed twins and their baby home to the mischief out of that. So that was why she just gave a gentle hint about it being late. And when Sissy came up, Eddie asked her the time, and Miss Sissy, as glib as you like, said it was 1/2 past kissing time, time to kiss again. But Eddie wanted to know because they were told to be in early. "Wait," said Sissy. "I'll run, ask my Uncle Peter over there, what's the time by his conundrum." So over she went, and when he saw her coming, she could see him take his hand out of his pocket, getting nervous, and beginning to play with his watch chain, looking up at the church. Passionate nature though he was, Gertie could see that he had enormous control over himself. One moment he had been there, fascinated by a loveliness that made him gaze, and the next moment it was the quiet, grave-faced gentleman, self-control expressed in every line of his distinguished-looking feature. Sissy said to excuse her. Would he mind please telling her what was the right time? And Gertie could see him, taking out his watch, listening to it, and looking up and clearing his throat. And he said he was very sorry, his watch was stopped. But he thought it must be after 8 because the sun was set. His voice had a cultured ring in it, and though he spoke in measured accents, there was a suspicion of a quiver in the mellow tones. Cece said thanks and came back with her tongue out, and said Uncle said his waterworks were out of order. Then they sang the second verse of the Tantum Ergo, and Canon O'Hanlon got up again and censed the Black Sacrament, and knelt down, and he told Father Conroy that one of the candles was just going to set fire to the flowers, and Father Conroy got up and settled it all right. And she could see the gentleman winding his watch and listening to the works, and she swung her leg more in and out in time. It was getting darker, but he could see, and he was looking all the time, that he was winding the watch or whatever he was doing to it, and then he put it back and put his hands back into his pockets. She felt a kind of a sensation rushing all over her, and she knew by the feel of her scalp and that irritation against her stays that that thing must be coming on, because the last time, too, when she clipped her hair on account of the moon. His dark eyes fixed themselves on her again, drinking in her every contour, literally worshipping at her shrine. If ever there was undisguised admiration in a man's passionate gaze, it was there, plain to be seen on that man's face. It is for you, Gertrude McDowell, and you know it. Eddie began to get ready to go, and it was high time for her, and Gertie noticed that the little hint she gave had had the desired effect, because it was a long way along the Strand to where there was the place to push up the push-car, and Sissy took off the twins' caps and tidied their hair to make herself attractive, of course. And Canon O'Hanlon stood up with his coat poking up at his neck, and Father Conroy handed him the card to read off, and he read out, Panem de Colo, Praestistidi Ice. And Eddie and Sissy were talking about the time all the time, and asking her, but Gertie could pay them back in their own coin, and she just answered with scathing politeness when Eddie asked her was she heartbroken about their best boy throwing her over. Gertie winced sharply. A brief cold blaze shone from her eyes that spoke volumes of scorn immeasurable. It hurt, oh yes. It cut deep, because Eddie had her own quiet way of saying things like that she knew would wound like the confounded little cat she was. Gertie's lips parted swiftly to frame the word, but she fought back the sob that rose to her throat. So slim, so flawless, so beautifully molded it seemed like one an artist might have dreamed of. She had loved him better than she knew. Light-hearted deceiver and fickle like all his sex, he would never understand what he had meant to her, and for an instant there was in the blue eyes a quick stinging of tears. Their eyes were probing her mercilessly, but with a brave effort she sparkled back in sympathy as she glanced at her new conquest for them to see. "Oh," responded Gertie, quick as lightning, laughing, and the proud head flashed up. "I can throw my cap at who I like because it's leap year." Her words rang out crystal clear, more musical than the cooing of the ring-dove, but they cut the silence icily. There was that in her young voice that was told she was not a one to be lightly trifled with. As for Mr. Reggie with his swank and his bit of money, she could just chuck him aside as if he was so much filth, and never again would she cast as much as a second thought on him and tear his silly postcard into a dozen pieces. And if ever after he dared to presume she could give him one look of measured scorn, that would make him shrivel up on the spot. Miss Puny little Eddie's countenance fell to no slight extent, and Gertie could see by her looking as black as thunder that she was simply in a towering rage, though she hid it, the little Kennet, because that shaft had struck home for her petty jealousy, and they both knew that she was something aloof, apart, in another sphere, that she was not one of them, and never would be. And there was somebody else, too, that knew it and saw it, so they could put that in their pipe and smoke it. Eddie straightened up baby Boardman to get ready to go, and Sissy tucked in the ball and the spades and buckets, and it was high time, too, because the Sandman was on his way for Master Boardman Jr. And Sissy told him, too, that Billy Winks was coming, and that Baby was to go dee-daw, and Baby looked just too ducky, laughing up out of his gleeful eyes, and Sissy poked him like that out of fun in his wee fat tummy, and Baby, without as much as by your leave, sent up his compliments to all and sundry on his brand-new dribbling bib. "Oh my, Pudney Pie," protested Sis. "He has his bib destroyed." The slight contretemps claimed her attention, but in 2-2 she set that little matter to right. Gertie stifled a smothered exclamation and gave a nervous cough, and Eddie asked what, and she was just going to tell her to catch it while it was flying, but she was ever ladylike in her deportment, so she simply passed it off with consummate tact by saying that that was the benediction, because just then the bell rang out of the steeple over the quiet seashore, because Canon O'Hanlon was up on the altar with the veil that Father Conroy put round his shoulders, giving the benediction with the blessed sacrament in his hands. How moving the scene was, there in the gathering twilight, the last glimpse of Erin, the touching chime of those evening bells, and at the same time, a bat flew forth from the ivied belfry through the dusk, hither, thither, with a tiny lost cry. And she could see far away the lights of the lighthouses so picturesque she would have loved to do with a box of paints because it was easier than to make a man, and soon the lamplighter would be going his rounds past the Presbyterian church grounds and along a shady Tritonville avenue where the couples walked and lighting the lamp near her window where Reggie Wiley used to turn his freewheel, like she read in that book, The Lamplighter by Miss Cummins, author of Mabel Vaughan and other tales. For Gertie had her dreams that no one knew of. She loved to read poetry, and when she got a keepsake from Bertha Supple of that lovely Confession album with the coral pink cover, to write her thoughts in, she laid it in the drawer of her toiletable, which, though it did not err on the side of luxury, was scrupulously neat and clean. It was there she kept her girlish treasure trove, the tortoise-shell combs, her Child of Mary badge, the white rose scent, the eyebrow line, her alabaster pouncet box, and the ribbons to change when her things came home from the wash, and there were soon some beautiful thoughts written in it, in violet ink, that she bought in Helly's of Dame Street. For she felt that she, too, could write poetry if she could only express herself like that poem that appealed to her so deeply that she had copied out the newspaper she found one evening round the potherbs. "Art thou real, my ideal?" it was called by Louis J. Walsh. Megara felt, and after there was something about twilight, wilt thou ever? And oft-times the beauty of poetry, so sad in its transient loveliness, had misted her eyes with silent tears, for she felt that the years were slipping by her, one by one, and but for that one shortcoming she knew she need fear no competition, and that was an accident coming down Dalkey Hill, and she always tried to conceal it. But it must end, she felt. If she saw that magic lure in his eyes, there would be no holding back for her. Love laughs at locksmiths. She would make the great sacrifice. Her every effort would be to share his thoughts. Dearer than the whole world would she be to him, and gild his days with happiness. There was the all-important question, and she was dying to know, was he a married man, or a widower who had lost his life, or some tragedy like the nobleman with a foreign name from the land of song, had to have her put in the madhouse, cruel only to be kind? But even if, what then? Would it make a very great difference? From everything in the least indelicate her fine-bred nature instinctively recoiled. She loathed that sort of person. The fallen women off the accommodation walk beside the daughter that went with the soldiers and coarse men with no respect for a girl's honor, degrading the sex and being taken up to the police station. No, not that. They would just be good friends like a big brother and sister without all that other in spite of the conventions of society with a big S. Perhaps it was an old flame he was in mourning for from the days beyond recall. She thought she understood. She would try to understand him because men were so different. The old love was waiting, waiting with little white hands stretched out, with blue appealing eyes. Heart of mine, she would follow her dream of love, the dictates of her heart that told her he was her all in all, the only man in the world for her, for love was the master guide. Nothing else mattered. Come what might, she would be wild, untrammeled, free. Canon O'Hanlon put the Blessed Sacrament back into the tabernacle, and genuflected, and the choir sang Laudet Dominum Omnis Gentes. And then he locked the tabernacle door because the benediction was over, and Father Conroy handed him his hat to put on, and Crosscat Eddie asked wasn't she coming, but Jackie Coffrey called out, "Oh look, sissy." And they all looked. Was it sheet lightning? But Tommy saw it too over the trees beside the church, blue and then green and purple. "It's fireworks," Sissy Caffrey said. And they all ran down the strand to see over the houses in the church, helter-skelter. Eddie with the push-car with baby Boardman in it, and Sissy holding Tommy and Jackie by the hand so they wouldn't fall running. "Come on, Gertie," Sissy called. "It's the bazaar fireworks." But Gertie was adamant. She had no intention of being at their beck and call. If they could run like roses, she could sit, so she said she could see from where she was. The eyes that were fastened upon her set her pulses tingling. She looked at him a moment, meeting his glance, and a light broke in upon her. White-hot passion was in that face, passion silent as the grave, and it had made her his. At last, they were left alone without the others to pry and pass remarks, and she knew he could be trusted to the death, steadfast, a sterling man, a man of inflexible honor to his fingertips. His hands and face were working, and a tremor went over her. She leaned back, far, to look up where the fireworks were, and she caught her knee in her hands, so as not to fall back looking up, and there was no one to see only him and her when she revealed all her graceful, beautifully shaped legs like that, supply soft and delicately rounded, and she seemed to hear the panting of his heart, his hoarse breathing, because she knew, too, about the passion of men like that. Hot-blooded, because Bertha Supple told her once in dead secret, and made her swear she'd never about the gentleman lodger that was staying with them out of the congested districts board, that had pictures cut out of papers of those skirt dancers and high kickers. And she said he used to do something not very nice that you can imagine sometimes in the bed, but this was altogether different from a thing like that, because there was all the difference because she could almost feel him draw her face to his, and the first quick hot touch of his handsome lips. Besides, there was absolution so long as you didn't do the other thing before being married, and there ought to be women priests that would understand without your telling out, and Sissy Caffrey, too, sometimes had that dreamy kind of dreamy look in her eyes, so that she, too, my dear, and Winnie Rippingham, so mad about actors' photographs, and besides, it was on account of that other thing coming on the way it did. And Jackie Caffrey shouted to look, but there was another, and she leaned back, and the garters were blue to match on account of the transparent, and they all saw it, and they all shouted to look. Look, there it was, and she leaned back ever so far to see the fireworks, and something queer was flying through the air, a soft thing, to and fro, dark. And she saw a long Roman candle going up over the trees, up, and in the tense hush they were all breathless with excitement as it went higher and higher, and she had to lean back more and more to look up after it, high, almost out of sight, and her face was suffused with a divine and entrancing blush from straining back, and he could see her other things too, Nain Sook knickers, the fabric that caresses the skin better than those other Pettywith, the green 4 and 11, on account of being white, and she let him, and she saw that he saw, and then it went so high it went out of sight a moment, and she was trembling in every limb from being bent so far back that he'd have full view high up above her knee, where no one ever, not even on the swing or waiting, and she wasn't ashamed, and he wasn't either, to look in that immodest way like that, because he couldn't resist the sight of the wondrous revealment, half offered like those skirt dancers behaving so immodest before gentlemen. Looking, and he kept on looking. She would fain have cried to him chokingly, held out her snowy, slender arms to him to come, to feel his lips laid on her white brow, the cry of a young girl's love, a little strangled cry, wrung from her, that cry that has rung through the ages. And then a rocket sprang and bang, shot blind blank, and oh! Then the Roman candle burst, and it was like a sign of oh! And everyone cried, oh! Oh, in raptures, and it gushed out of it like a stream of rain-gold hair threads, and they shed, and ah! They were all greeny, dewy stars falling with golden. Oh, so lovely. Oh, soft, sweet, soft. Then all melted away dewily in the gray air. All was silent. Ah, she glanced at him as he bent forward quickly, a pathetic little glance of piteous protest, of shy reproach under which he colored like a girl. He was leaning back against the rock behind. Leopold Bloom, for it is he, stands silent, with bowed head before those young guileless eyes. What a brute he had been! At it again? A fair, unsullied soul had called to him, and wretch that he was, now he had answered? An utter cad he had been, he of all men. But there was an infinite store of mercy in those eyes, for him too a word of pardon, even though he had erred and sinned and wandered. Should a girl tell? No, 1,000 times no. That was their secret, only theirs, only in the hiding twilight. And there was none to know or tell save the little bat that flew so softly through the evening to and fro, and little bats don't tell. Sissy Caffrey whistled, imitating the boys in the football field to show what a great person she was, and then she cried, "Gertie, Gertie, we're going, come on. We can see from farther up." Gertie had an idea, one of love's little ruses. She slipped a hand into her kerchief pocket, and took out the wadding and waved in reply, of course, without letting him, and then slipped it back. Wonder if he's too far to. She rose. Was it goodbye? No, she had to go, but they would meet again. There, and she would dream of that till then, tomorrow, of her dream of yester-eve. She drew herself up to her full height. Their souls met in a last lingering glance, and the eyes that reached her heart, full of a strange shining, hung enraptured on her sweet flower-like face. She half smiled to him, wanly. A sweet, forgiving smile, a smile that verged on tears, and then they parted. Slowly, without looking back, she went down the uneven strand to Sissy, to Eddie, to Jackie and Tommy Caffrey, to little baby Boardman. It was darker now, and there were stones and bits of wood on the strand and slippy seaweed. She walked with a certain quiet dignity characteristic of her, but with care and very slowly, because Gertie McDowell was... Tight boots? No, she's lame. Oh. Mr. Bloom watched her as she limped away. Poor girl. And that's why she's left on the shelf, and the others did a sprint, thought something was wrong by the cut of her jib. Jilted beauty. A defect is 10 times worse in a woman, but makes them polite. Glad I didn't know it when she was on the show. Hot little devil all the same. I wouldn't mind. Curiosity like a nun or a negress or a girl with glasses. That squinty one is delicate. Near her monthlies, I expect. Makes them feel ticklish. I have such a bad headache today. Where did I put the letter? Yes, all right. All kinds of crazy longings. Licking pennies. Girl in Tranquilla, convent, that nun told me liked to smell rock oil. Virgins go mad in the end, I suppose. Sister? How many women in Dublin have it today? Martha? She? Something in the air. That's the moon. But then why don't all women menstruate at the same time with the same moon, I mean? Depends on the time they were born, I suppose. Or all start scratched then get out of a step. Sometimes Molly and Millie together. Anyhow, I got the best of that. Damn glad I didn't do it in the bath this morning over her silly "I will punish you" letter. Made up for that tram driver this morning, the Gouger McCoy stopping me to say nothing, and his wife, engagement and the country valise, voice like a pickaxe. Thankful for small mercies, cheap too, yours for the asking, because they want it themselves, their natural craving, shoals of them every evening poured out of offices, reserved better. Don't want it, they throw it at you. Catch 'em alive. Oh, pity they can't see themselves, a dream of well-filled hose. Where was that? Ah, yes, mutoscope pictures in Capel Street, for men only, Peeping Tom. Willie's hat and what the girls did with it. Did they snapshot those girls, or is it all a fake? Lingerie does it. Felt for the curves inside her déshabillé. Excites them also when they're... I'm all clean, come and dirty me. And they like dressing one another for the sacrifice. Millie delighted with Molly's new blouse, at first, put them all on to take them all off. Molly, why I bought her violet garters, us two, the tie he wore, his lovely socks and turned-up trousers. He wore a pair of gaiters the night that we first met. His lovely shirt was shining beneath his what? Of jet? Say a woman loses a charm with every pin she takes out. Pinned together, oh Mary lost the pin of her. Dressed up to the nines for somebody. Fashion part of their charm. Just changes when you're on the track of the secret. Except the East. Mary, Martha. Now as then. No reasonable offer refused. She wasn't in a hurry either. Always off to a fellow when they are. They never forget an appointment, out on spec, probably. They believe in chance because, like themselves, and the others inclined to give her an old dig. Girlfriends at school, arms around each other's necks, or with 10 fingers locked, kissing and whispering secrets about nothing in the convent garden. Nuns with whitewashed faces, cool coifs and their rosaries going up and down, vindictive too for what they can't get. Barbed wire, be sure now and write me, and I'll write to you, now won't you? Molly and Josie Powell. Till Mr. Right comes along, then meet once in a blue moon. Tableau. Oh, look who it is, for the love of God. How are you at all? What have you been doing with yourself? Kiss and delighted too, kiss to see you. Picking holes in each other's appearance. You're looking splendid, sister souls, showing their teeth at one another. How many have you left? Wouldn't lend each other a pinch of salt. Ah, devils they are, when that's coming on them. Dark devilish appearance. Molly often told me, feel things a ton weight. Scratch the sole of my foot. Oh, that way. Oh, that's exquisite. Feel it myself, too. Good to rest once in a way. Wonder if it's bad to go with them then. Safe in one way, turns milk, makes fiddle strings snap. Something about withering plants I read in a garden. Besides, they say if the flower withers she wears, she's a flirt. All are. Dare say she felt I. When you feel like that, you often meet what you feel. Liked me or what? Dress they look at. Always know a fellow courting. Collars and cuffs. Well, cocks and lions do the same, and stags. Same time might prefer a tie undone or something. Trousers? Suppose I, when I was. No, gently does it. Dislike rough and tumble. Kiss in the dark and never tell. Saw something in me. Wonder what? Sooner have me as I am than some poet chap with bear's grease plastery hair. Love lock over his dexter optic. To aid gentlemen in literary. Ought to attend to my appearance, my age. Didn't let her see me in profile. Still, you never know. Pretty girls and ugly men marrying. Beauty and the beast. Besides, I can't be so if Molly took off her hat to show her hair, wide brim, bought to hide her face, meeting someone might know her, bend down or carry a bunch of flowers to smell. Hair strong and rut, 10 bob I got for Molly's combings when we were on the rocks in Hollis Street. And why not? Suppose he gave her money. Why not? All a prejudice. She's worth 10, 15 more a pound. What? I think so. All that for nothing? Bold hand, Miss Marion. Did I forget to write address on that letter, like the postcard I sent to Flynn? And the day I went to Jimmy's without a necktie. Wrangle with Molly it was, put me off. No, I remember. Richie Golding, he's another. Weighs on his mind. Funny, my watch stopped at 4:30. Dust. Shark liver oil they used to clean. Could do it myself, save. Was that just when she? Oh, he did. Into her. She did. Done. Ah, Mr. Bloom with careful hand recomposed his wet shirt. Oh Lord, that little limping devil begins to feel cold and clammy. After effect not pleasant. Still, you have to get rid of it some way. They don't care. Complimented, perhaps. Go home to nicey bread and milky and say night prayers with the kiddies. Well, aren't they? See her as she is, spoil all. Must have the same stage setting, the rouge, the costume, position, music, the name too, amers of actresses, Nell Gwynn, Miss Bracegirdle, Maud Branscombe. Curtain up, moonlight silver effulgence, maiden discovered with pensome bosom. Little sweetheart, come and kiss me, still I feel the strength it gives a man. That's the secret of it. Good job I let off there behind the wall, coming out of Dignam's. Cider that was, otherwise I couldn't have. Makes you want to sing after. La causa sant taratara. Suppose I spoke to her. What about? Bad plan, however, if you don't know how to end the conversation. Ask them a question, they ask you another. Good idea if you're stuck, gain time, but then you're in a cart. Wonderful, of course, if you say, good evening, and you see she's on for it. Good evening. Oh, but the dark evening in the Appian. Way I nearly spoke to Miss Clinch. Oh, thinking she was. Whew! Girl in Meath Street that night. All the dirty things I made her say. All wrong, of course. My arcs, she called it. It's so hard to find one who, if you don't answer when they solicit, must be horrible for them till they harden. And kissed my hand when I gave her the extra 2 shillings. Parrots, press the button and the bird will speak. Wish she hadn't called me sir. Oh, her mouth in the dark. And you, a married man with a single girl. That's what they enjoy, taking a man from another woman, or even hear of it. Different with me. Glad to get away from other chap's wife. eating off his cold plate, chapping the Burton today, spitting back gum-chewed gristle. French letters still in my pocketbook, cause of half the trouble. But might happen sometime, I don't think. Come in, all is prepared. I dreamt. What? Worst is beginning. How they change the venue when it's not what they like. Ask you, do you like mushrooms because she once knew a gentleman who? Or ask what someone was going to say when he changed his mind and stopped. Yet, if I went the whole hog, say, I want to, something like that, because I did, she too, offend her, then make it up, pretend to want something awfully, then cry off for her sake. Flatters them. She must have been thinking of someone else all the time. What harm? Must, since she came to the use of reason, he and he and he. First kiss does the trick, the propitious moment. Something inside them goes pop. Mushy-like, tell by their eye on the sly. First thoughts are best. Remember that till their dying day. Molly, Lieutenant Mulvey that kissed her under the Moorish wall beside the gardens. 15, she told me, but her breasts were developed. She fell asleep then, after Glencree dinner, that was when we drove home. Featherbed Mountain, gnashing her teeth in sleep. Lord Mayor had his eye on her too. Val Dillon, apoplectic. There she is with them down for the fireworks. My fireworks. Up like a rocket, down like a stick. All the children, twins they must be, waiting for something to happen. Want to be grown-ups, dressing in mother's clothes. Time enough, understands all the ways of the world. And the dark one with the mop head and the nigger mouth. I knew she could whistle. Mouth made for that, like Molly. Why that high-class whore in Jammett's wore her veil only to her nose. Would you mind, please, telling me the right time? I'll tell you the right time up a dark lane. Say prunes and prisms 40 times every morning. Cure for fat lips. Caressing the little boy, too. Onlookers see most of the game. Of course, they understand birds, animals, babies in their line. She didn't look back when she was going down the Strand. Wouldn't give that satisfaction. Those lovely seaside girls. Fine eyes she had, clear. It's the white of the eye that brings out not so much the pupil. Did she know what eye? Course, like a cat sitting beyond a dog's jump. Women never meet one like that Wilkins in the high school, drawing a picture of Venus with all his belongings on show. Call that innocence. Poor idiot. His wife has her work cut out for her. Never see them sit on a bench marked wet paint, eyes all over them, look under the bed for what's not there, longing to get the fright of their lives. Sharp as needles they are. When I said to Molly the man at the corner of Cuff Street was good looking, though she might like, twigged at once he had a false arm. Had too. Where do they get that? Typist going up Roger Green's stairs 2 at a time to show her understandings. Handed down from father to mother to daughter. I mean, bred in the bone. Millie, for example, drawing her handkerchief on the mirror to save the ironing. Best place for an ad to catch a woman's eye, on a mirror. And when I sent for Molly's paisley shawl to Prescott's by the way that ad I must, carrying home the change in her stocking. Clever little minx, I never told her. Neat way she carries parcels too. Attract men, small thing like that, holding up her hand, shaking it to let the blood flow back when it was red. Who did you learn that from? Nobody. Something the nurse taught me. Oh, don't they know? 3 years old, she was in front of Molly's dressing table just before we left Lombard Street West. Me have a nice pace, Mullinger. Who knows? Ways of the world. Young student. Straight on her pens anyways, not like the other. Still, she was game. Lord, I am wet. Devil you are. Swell of her calf. Transparent stockings stretched to breaking point. Not like that frump today. A.E. rumpled stockings, or the one in Grafton Street. White. Wow, beef to the heel. A monkey puzzle rocket burst, spluttering and darting crackles. Zrads and zrads, zrads, zrads. And Sissy and Tommy and Jackie ran out to sea, and Eddie, after the push car, and then Gertie beyond the curve of the rocks. Will she? Watch, watch, see. Looked around. She smelt an onion. Darling, I saw all. Lord! Did me good all the same. Off color after Kiernan's dignums. For this relief, much thanks. And Hamlet, that is, Lord. It was all things combined. Excitement, when she leaned back, felt an ache in the butt of my tongue. Your head, it simply swirls. He's right. Might have made a worse fool of myself, however. Instead of talking about nothing, then I will tell you all. Still, it was a kind of language between us. It couldn't be. No, Gertie they called her. Might be false name, however, like my name. And the address Dolphin's Barn, a blind. Her maiden name was Jemina Brown, and she lived with her mother in Irishtown. Place made me think of that, I suppose, all tarred with the same brush wiping pins in their stockings, but the ball rolled down to her as if it understood. Every bullet has its billet. Course, I could never throw anything straight at school. Crooked as a ram's horn. Sad, however, because it lasts only a few years till they settle down to pot walloping, and Papa's pants will soon fit Willie, and Fuller's earth for the baby when they hold him out to do ah. No soft job saves them, keeps them out of harm's way. Nature, washing child, washing corpse. Dignum, children's hands always round them. Coconut skulls, monkeys, not even closed at first. Sour milk in their swaddles and tainted curds. Oughtn't to have given that child an empty teat to suck. Fill it up with wind. Miss Beaufoy, Purefoy, must call to the hospital. Wonder is Nurse Callan there still? She used to look over some nights when Molly was in the coffee palace. That young Dr. O'Hare, I noticed her brushing his coat. And Miss Breen and Miss Dignam once like that too, marriageable. Worst of all, at night Miss Duggan told me in the City Arms, husband rolling in drunk, stink of pub on him, like a polecat. Have that in your nose in the dark, whiff of stale booze, then ask in the morning, was I drunk last night? Bad policy, however, to fault the husband. Chickens may come home to roost. They stick by another like glue. Maybe the women's fault also. That's where Molly can knock spots off them. It's the blood of the South, Moorish. Also the form, the figure. Hands felt for the opulent. Just compare, for instance, those others. Wife locked up at home, skeleton in the cupboard. Allow me to introduce my. Then they trot you out like some kind of nondescript, wouldn't know what to call her. Always see a fellow's weak point in his wife. Still, there's destiny in it, falling in love, having their own secrets between them. Chaps that would go to the dogs if some woman didn't take them in hand. Then little chits of girls, heights of a shilling in coppers with some hubbies. As God made them, he matched them. Sometimes children turn out well enough, twice not makes one. Or old rich chap of 70 and blushing bride, marry in May and repent in December. This wet is very unpleasant, stuck. Well, the foreskin is not back, better detach. Ow! Other hand, a 6-footer with a wifey up to his watch pocket, long and the short of it, big he and little she. Very strange about my watch. Wristwatches are always going wrong. Wonder if there's any magnetic influence between the person because that was about the time he. Yes, I suppose at once, cats away, the mice will play. I remember looking in Pill Lane. Also, that now is magnetism. Back of everything, magnetism. Earth is, for instance, pulling this and being pulled. That causes movement. And time, well, that's the time the movement takes. Then if one thing stopped, the whole gazebo would be stopped bit by bit, because it's all arranged. Magnetic needle tells you what's going on in the sun, the stars, little piece of steel iron. When you hold out the fork, come, tip, woman and man, that is, fork and steel, Molly he, dress up and look and suggest, and let you see, and see more, and defy you if you're a man to see that. And like a sneeze coming, legs, look, and if you have any guts in you, tip, have to let fly. Wonder how she was feeling in that region. Shame all put on before third person, more put out about a hole in her stocking. Molly, her underjaw stuck out, head back, about the farmer in the riding boots and spurs at the horse show. And when the painters were in Lombard Street West, fine voice that fellow had. How Giglini began, smell that I did, like flowers it was too, violets. Came from the turpentine, probably in the paint. Make their own use of everything. Same time, doing it, scraped her slipper on the floor so they wouldn't hear. But lots of them can't kick the beam, I think. Keep that thing up for hours. Kind of a general, all round over me, and half down my back. Wait. Yes, that's her perfume. Why she waved her hand. I leave you to think this of me when I'm far away on the pillow. What is it? Heliotrope? No. Hyacinth? Roses, I think. She'd like that kind of scent. Sweet and cheap, soon sour. Why, Molly likes a Papanax. Suits her, with a little jessamine mixed. Her high notes and her low notes. At the dance night she met him, dance of the hours. Heat brought it out. She was wearing her black, and it had the perfume of the time before. Good conductor, is it? Or bad? Light, too. Suppose there's some connection. For instance, if you go into a cellar where it's dark, mysterious thing, too. Why did I smell it only now? Took its time in coming in like herself, slow but sure. Suppose it's ever so millions of tiny grains blown across. Yes, it is. Because those spice islands, Chingalese this morning, smell them leagues off. Tell you what it is. It's like a fine, fine veil or web they have all over the skin. Fine, like what do you call it, gossamer? And they're always spinning it out of 'em, fine as anything, like rainbow colors without knowing it. Clings to everything she takes off. Vamp of her stockings, warm shoe, stays, drawers, little kick, taking 'em off. Bye-bye till next time. Also, the cat likes to sniff in her shift in the bed. Know her smell in 1,000, bathwater too, reminds me of strawberries and cream. Wonder where it is, really. There, or the armpits, or under the neck? Because you get it out of all the holes and corners. Hyacinth perfume made of oil of ether or something. Muskrat, bag under their tails. One grain, pour off odor for years. Dogs at each other's behinds. Good evening. Evening. How do you sniff? Very well, thank you. Animals go by that. Yes, now, look at it that way. We're the same. Some women, instance, warn you off when they have their period. Come near, then get a hogo you can hang your hat on. Like what? Potted herrings gone stale, or boof, please keep on the grass. Perhaps they get a man smell of us. What though? Cigarette gloves Long John had on his desk the other day? Breath? What do you eat and drink gives that? No. Man smell, I mean. Must be connected with that, because priests that are supposed to be are different. Women buzz round it like flies round treacle. Railed off the altar, get onto it at any cost, the tree of forbidden priest. Oh, Father, will you? Let me be the first to. That diffuses itself all through the body, permeates. Source of life, and it's extremely curious, the smell. Celery sauce, let me. Mr. Bloom inserted his nose, into the, opening of his waistcoat. Almonds or, no, lemons it is. Ah, no, that's the soap. Oh, by the by, that lotion. I knew there was something on my mind. Never went back, and the soap not paid. Dislike carrying bottles like that hag this morning. Hines might have paid me 3 shillings. I could mention Meagher's just to remind him. Still, if he works that paragraph, 2 and 9, bad opinion of me he'll have. Call tomorrow. How much do I owe you? 3 and 9. 2 and 9, sir. Ah, might stop giving him credit another time. Lose your customers that way, pubs do. Fellows run up a bill on the slate, and then slinking around the back streets into somewhere else. Here's this nobleman passed before, blown in from the bay. Just went as far as turn back. Always at home at dinner time, looks mangled out, had a good tuck-in. Enjoying nature now, grace after meals, after supper, walk a mile. Sure, he has a small bank balance somewhere, government sit. Walk after him now, make him awkward like those newsboys me today. Still, you learn something. See ourselves as others see us, so long as women don't mock what matter. That's the way to find out. Ask yourself who he is now, the mystery man on the beach. Prize Titbit Story by Mr. Leopold Bloom. Payment at the rate of 1 guinea per column. And that fellow today at the graveside in the brown mackintosh. Corns on his kismet, however. Healthy, perhaps, absorb all the... Whistle brings rain, they say. Must be somewhere. Salt in the Ormond damp. The body feels the atmosphere. Old Betty's joints are on the rack. Mother Shifton's prophecy that is about ships around they fly in the twinkling. No, signs of rain it is. The royal reader and distant hills seem coming nigh. Howth, Bailey Light, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. C. Has to change or they might think it's a house. Wreckers, Grace Starling, people afraid of the dark. Also glowworms, cyclists, lighting up time. Jewels, diamonds, flash better. Women, light is a kind of reassuring. Not going to hurt you. Better now, of course, than long ago. Country roads, run you through the small guts for nothing. Still, 2 types there are against you. Scowl or smile. Pardon. Not at all. Best time to spray plants, too. In the shade after the sun. Some light still. Red rays are longest. Roig Bevance taught us. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. A star, I see. Venus? Can't tell yet. 2, when 3 it's night. Were those night clouds there all the time? Looks like a phantom ship. No, wait. Trees, are they? An optical illusion. Mirage. Land of the setting sun, this. Home rules sun, setting in the southeast. My native land. Good night. Dew falling. Bad for you, dear, to sit on that stone. Brings on white fluxions. Never have little baby then, less he was big strong fight his way up through. Might get piles myself, sticks too like a summer cold, sore on the mouth, cut with grass or paper worst. Friction of the position, like to be that rock she sat on, oh sweet little. You don't know how nice you looked. I begin to like them at that age. Green apples, grab at all that offer. Suppose it's the only time we cross legs, seated. Also the library today, those girl graduates, happy chairs under them, but it's evening influence. They feel all that. Open like flowers, know their hours, sunflowers, Jerusalem artichokes, in ballrooms, chandeliers, avenues under the lamps. Nightstock in Matt Dillon's garden where I kissed her shoulder. Wish I had a full-length oil painting of her then. June that was too, I wooed. The year returns, history repeats itself. Ye crags and peaks, I'm with you once again. Life, love, voyage round your own little world. And now? Sad about her lame, of course, but must be on your guard not to feel too much pity. They take advantage. All quiet on Howth now, the distant hills seem, where we, the rhododendrons, I am a fool, perhaps. He gets the plums, and I get the plum stones. Where I come in, all that old hill has seen. Names change, that's all. Lovers, yum yum. Tired I feel now. Will I get up? Oh, wait. Drained all the manhood out of me, little wretch. She kissed me. Never again, my youth, only once it comes, or hers. Take the train there tomorrow. No, returning not the same. Like kids, your second visit to a house. The new I want. Nothing new under the sun. Care of P.O. Dolphin's barn. Are you not happy in your, naughty darling, at Dolphin's barn, charades in Luke Doyle's house? Matt Dillon and his bevy of daughters, Tiny, Addie, Floey, Mamie, Louie, Hetty, Molly too. 87 that was, year before we, and the old major partial to his drop of spirits. Curious, she, an only child. I, an only child, so it returns. Think you're escaping and run into yourself. Longest way round is the shortest way home. And just when he and she. Circus horse, walking in a ring, Rip Van Winkle we played. Rip, tear in Henny Doyle's overcoat. Van, bread van delivering. Winkle, cockles and periwinkles. Then I did Rip Van Winkle coming back. She leaned on the sideboard watching, Moorish eyes, 20 years asleep in Sleepy Hollow. All changed, forgotten, the younger old, his gun rusty from the dew. Bah, what is that flying about? Swallow? Bat, probably. Thinks I'm a tree, so blind. Have birds no smell. Metempsychosis. They believe you could be changed into a tree from grief. Weeping willow. Bah. There he goes. Funny little beggar. Wonder where he lives. Belfry up there, very likely. Hanging by his heels in the odor of sanctity. Bell scared him out, I suppose. Mass seems to be over. Could hear them all at it. Pray for us and pray for us and pray for us. Good idea, the repetition. Same thing with ads. Buy from us and buy from us. Yes, there's light in the priest's house. Their frugal meal. Remember about the mistake in the valuation when I was in Tom's. 28 it is. 2 houses they have. Gabriel Conroy's brother is curate. Bah, again. Wonder why they come out at night like mice. They're a mixed breed. Birds are hopping mice. What frightens them, light or noise? Better sit still. All instincts, like the bird and drought, got water out of the end of a jar by throwing in pebbles. Like a little man in a cloak he is with tiny hands, weeny bones. Almost see them shimmering, kind of a bluey white. Colors depend on the light, you see. Stare the sun, for example, like the eagle then, look at a shoe,